I first noticed your work just under 10 years or so ago when you were still based in Cambridge, and I thought, gosh, that looks like a really bright, interesting young outfit. I'd love to be involved at some stage. Blow me, 10 years later they asked me to join the board, which is great. It took 10 years to get there. I love this work, and I love these people. And there are just three things I want to say in relation to their work and what they stand for. I think it's really significant that it's a think and action tank. I think it's really important that all the significant research and reading and hard-nosed data sitting behind, both qualitative and quantitative data sitting behind their work, is informed by young people's voice. Pupil and student voice is at the heart of my research and professional interest. If I ran education, I'd make pupil and student voice the first plank of inspection, just as well, to the great relief, I'm sure, of most of the sector, that I'm not involved in running Ofsted. But it is seriously important, because what young people say about their experiences in life really needs to be at the heart of evidence and action. Second thing I think it's important to say is that it's in the detail of the action that these guys have real impact. All their reports talk about the very specific things beyond the policy initiatives, important as they are, that make the difference to the lived experience of young people. And there are just two examples I'd like to refer to. The first is the great report, loads and loads of reports, I'm just going to pull out two. The one on about the experiences of disadvantaged children and young people with special educational needs, special or unique, and at the heart of that is that the bullying and the poor provision which is often in place, not in terms of finances but in terms of attitudes towards these young people. It's the specific acts of kindness that lift that shift through the nonsense. And the final thing I'd like to say in relation to the small details, the work that Sam Barrs produced earlier on the summer about the difference in terms of the schools that were making a difference to outcomes and provision and a whole plethora of indicators for our most disadvantaged young people. Interesting, one thing that really leapt out to me was the high aspirations lived out every day and expectations for these children. And at the heart of that were heads who were teaching. This is goldmine stuff, colleagues, and I'm delighted to hand over to you now to continue the conversation. Well done, you and your team.
Thank you so much, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you who are here, actually, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for so many of you. And so many of you here have commissioned work from us, have supported us, have fed into our research, have been interviewed, have completed endless surveys, have done all sorts of things which mean that we have been able to ensure that this sector, this really important sector, the youth and education sector, is informed by the evidence that it needs. And so, here we are as the Centre for Education and Youth. And it feels like quite a big change in some ways, but actually our mission is still the same. We still say and we still will pursue the mission that is that society should ensure that all children and young people make a fulfilling transition to adulthood. And what that means is that we believe that it is society's responsibility, and not for just for some young people, but for all young people. Secondly, we use the word fulfilling in there. And we know that a huge part of that is about academic attainment and what schools do. But actually it's more than that. It's also about wider experiences and young people being able to write their own life stories by having the realms opened up and different opportunities, and a real social justice agenda behind there no longer being gaps in that too. And finally, we're going to continue to track young people all the way through their journey. So going right from the early years, we do work on health visitors, on early years education, but all the way through to transitions and unequal labour market outcomes and access to higher education. So we will continue to follow that whole journey through. But that's our intention, and that's where we want to take things. But the specifics of that, we need you guys to help us flesh out. So that's why today we've got an amazing panel, and they're all contributors to the report that we're publishing this evening, Decade in the Making, What Next for Young People in England. And these people here come from a range of experience, a range of backgrounds that represents the work we do. And so I'm delighted to introduce them, and they're each going to spend 2 minutes telling us where we should be when we come back in 10 years' time. So I don't know if they'll be here, but wherever we meet up in 10 years' time, hopefully these guys are going to tell us what the world should look like. And they're not all going to agree, and that's part of the fun of what we do, which is about examining the complexity, navigating those disagreements, because it's a complicated world and it's a complicated sector. But hopefully these guys are going to help us navigate it. So I am delighted to introduce them. So first we have over here, we have Laura. And Laura is the right person to introduce first, because Laura was actually the first person to join me in this strange journey over the last 10 years, when we trained together, and we didn't actually get on very well when we were training together. But at the same time, I kind of thought that once we set up this organisation, she was the kind of person who would have some really keen insight and who could provide the scrutiny the sector needed. And it turned out to be one of my first punts that turned out to go quite well. And so Laura's going to kick us off by telling us what she thinks needs to happen over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Just before I do that, and I normally do follow absolutely everything that Loic says, but I am just going to take 1 minute here to say something, because I don't know if anyone else is going to say it tonight, and I don't want this opportunity to go to waste. In 2006, when I started citizenship teacher training, there was this unusual character in our cohort who turned up with no shoes on and, and spent quite a lot of his time leaving through the window, which I was not particularly happy about, and spent a long time trying to explain to him at length that when he turned up in his classroom in September, he was going to have to put his shoes back on, he was going to have to leave via the door, otherwise he was going to be a bad role model to those children. I was actually really wrong. Loic went on to become probably one of the best role models for citizenship teaching I have ever seen. And I don't just mean that in the classroom, I mean in everything that he has done since. And I know he won't spend time blowing his own trumpet, and he will make tonight about the Centre for Education Youth, and I will get back to that in a second. But I did just want to say that I think he is one of the most inspirational people in education. He does make it about everybody else a lot of the time, and I do just want to pay homage to the fact that from 2006 through in his teaching, through to setting up LKMCO, through to getting all of us who are on board in the team today and setting up what is now the Centre for Education Youth, I think he has been incredible, and I think he deserves a round of applause as well. So can you please... When Loic first asked me to blog for him, I used to write these crazy things, and when he sent over a few weeks ago a letter in which he said, "Could you please write something for our report for the Centre for Education and Youth?" I said, "No problem," and wrote it back. And then he said, "Trust you to come up with something so weird and unexpected." So this is what I wrote. In 10 years' time, I think there will be one thing in education which will have to change. I don't think we talk about it, I don't think it's expected, and yet I think it's coming. And it's this. The other day, I ordered my Amazon shopping. I now get Amazon Fresh, and it didn't arrive in the morning. Now, it had taken me a few minutes online to put together my order. It was pretty easy. I repeated last week's. Then when they didn't arrive, I was able to speak to a chatbot at first. That couldn't get through to me, so somebody immediately phoned me back. Over the next hour, I spoke to 3 different operators who made sure that they could track exactly where my driver was before he turned up. I then immediately afterwards got an email to tell me I had a £5 voucher back. Now, this isn't an advert for Amazon. What this is me telling you that the expectations of a customer have changed. Now, my order was quite a lot, it's about 90 quid, and the other year I spent about, I don't know, £4,000 with Amazon when I totted it up, so I was furious at them the other day. Now, when we look at what we do in schools, we give schools about £5,000 a year per pupil, or will do under Boris Johnson apparently. And parents give their children over to schools. The expectation from parents over the next 10 years that service can be more customised, will involve more communication with the school, and will be at a much higher, more professional level, is bound to happen. My friends cannot believe when they are given the opportunity to pick a school that they are supposed to take their kids there at 9 and pick them back up again at 3:30. There's no add-on, There's no click for £2 extra after school. There's no ability to just get onto a chatbot and find out if actually homework is tomorrow or on Thursday. And I don't think it's going to hold. And one of the contenders for this will be the low-cost private market. These are the areas that they will go for. They will come for flexible hours, they will come for longer hours, and they will come for better communication. And so while we're all having conversations at the moment about getting rid of private schools, I actually think the big public schools are not the issue. Watch out for those small private schools who will go on flexibility and communication. You have to watch out for that. It's not going to wait another 10 years.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Luke. And one of the reasons I wanted Luke to speak is because I mentioned that we are not just about schools and the formal education sector, we are about the fact that schools can't do these things alone and society has to do more than just provide schools if we want to support young people. And Luke works in two roles, one as a community and youth worker for Hackney Quest locally here, and secondly at Reach Children's Zone. And bridging that divide is part of the reason we set up LKMCO back then and Centre for Education in Youth now. I was a youth worker myself before I became a teacher, and that has shaped my lens. But what I want to hear today is what it says to Luke about the future.
Evening. I should start by maybe warning you that I'm a slightly grumpy person, as you might expect. So I'm going to make the main point from my piece by telling you a brief story about a young person that I work with. I'm going to call him Jake, that's not his real name. I've just come from a home visit with Jake. I've been working with him for over 2 years, and he's one of the sharpest, most intelligent young people that I've ever met. I should start as well by saying that I think he's going to be all right. He's hopefully going to start a pre-apprenticeship soon. He's got a lot of support around him, so it's more of a hope than a guarantee, but I think he's going to be all right. And I think his story exemplifies what is both horrendously wrong and beautifully right in our education system. So when I started working with him, he went to an academy school not too far from here. There were some amazing teachers there. There was some amazing stuff happening. But there were far too many rules and routines that weren't backed up by reasons or relationships. And at times, it felt like the place had more glass in it than it did compassion. Midway through year 10, he spots his name on a list of students in the head of year's office. Not too long after that, Ofsted inspectors come to the school. My young man and others who are on that list are taken on an impromptu bowling and Nando's trip with no written parental consent. Briefly, not long after that, he was excluded from the school. Again, coincidentally, other names on the list were also included in that treatment. And he went to an alternative provision which he, I, his mum and others who worked with him would describe as dangerous. He said it was like going from a prison to a bad youth club. It was shortly after that that he got involved in county lines drug dealing, which most of you will know what it is. He was only involved very briefly, I'm very happy to say, but the stuff that he has gone through and he has told me about will stay with him and will stay with me for the rest of our lives. Every institution, authority and service that dealt with him belittled him, alienated him, diminished him, and his school was the worst offender. He was treated as expendable and disposable, and so was everyone else on that list. And he's not unique. I work with lots of other young people in a similar situation. But thankfully, myself and other professionals were able to move him into a different AP, and this one I will name is called The Complete Works, and it's in Whitechapel, and it's run by two legends called Jo and Kaylee, two young women. And Jake reckons they're the best teachers in the world because of what they achieve with troubled young people. They're warm, strict, in a meaningful sense of that term. They're nurturing, they're caring, they're kind, they get to know every young person, and they have rocket high expectations. I think what we need in the next 10 years is both more Jo and Kaylee's and also more incentivization systematically for their kind of approach in mainstream. What we have at the moment is incentives based on GCSE results and Ofsted, which unfortunately too many schools interpret as reasons to be punitive and reasons to exclude. We also, as a side note, need massive redistribution of wealth and power. So we need more places like Jo and Kaylee created in mainstream as well as in AP. And we need significant systematic change if the young people that I work with and many of the people that you work with are going to have a successful next 10 years. If we have the places but not the change, we're sticking plasters on broken legs. If we have the change but not the places, it'll be a cold kind of revolution. That's what we need in the next 10 years. Cheers.
Thank you. So I mentioned that one of my first jobs in this sector was as a youth worker, and what I was doing was working on a programme called Active Citizenship in Schools. Funnily enough, lots of things come round more than once in the education and youth sector, as you may have noticed. And recently we found ourselves working on a youth social action project and helping careers leaders in schools to develop more youth social action, and Eleanor's done a fantastic job of leading on that project. And one of my favourite things, I reckon, and actually probably most of the team's favourite things about our jobs, is that we actually get to go out and talk to young people. We don't just have to look at the data, we get to get under the skin of what is actually going on. And one of the most interesting and exciting young people we've met recently is Yetunde, who features in a film we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. And so we were really keen to bring her here today to share her perspective on what she hopes young people like her might experience in 10 years' time.
Thank you. So my name's Yetunde. I'm a Year 13 student. I go to the school London Academy of Excellence in Stratford. And, you know, it took a long time to get there. I studied maths, economics, geography, and I want to study geography at Oxford. And it didn't always start from there. I always had sort of problems in, you know, growing up in secondary school. In my area, I live in the borough of Greenwich, and I go to school in the borough of Newham. These are very highly deprived areas and highly deprived London boroughs. And what I want to see the next 10 years, I want to see more aspirational young people. And I think that involves support from teachers, support from family members, and support from organisations that some of you work from. And I want to see that support in young people. You know, I never started having high expectations of myself, and now I go to a school that pushes me. I have teachers that support me pastorally and academically, and so in the next 10 years, I want to see more young people have high aspiration for themselves, and not just young people. I want to see young people of colour. I want to see black and minority ethnic students. I want to see students with special needs accessing higher education, and I want to see students maybe from disadvantaged backgrounds and from deprived neighbourhoods go explore and really just realise their full potential and know that they can do it, and just have that sort of support that will allow them to identify their individual success. And their individual success might not be higher education. It might just be, you know, getting a job. It might just be, you know, sustaining, just working in their local area and just being happy. And to identify that individual success starts with the young person. It starts with organisations like this, so we can support young people in the coming decades and just allow us to realise our full potential. And I'd like to offer my perspective on that today.
So I said that one of the things we get to do is go and talk to people on the ground, whether they be young people or whether they be practitioners. And the benefit of that is that we quite often get to notice that there's something coming round the corner, that there's some sort of issue, some sort of thing we should be looking into. And about 6 or 7 years ago, we started to think there's something going on with teacher recruitment and retention. Sounds familiar now. But that meant that we decided to do a project which many of you will have come across, a project called Why Teach. And that took us to all sorts of different parts of the country, because actually a lot of the time, a lot of the policy debate is focused on London, right? But what we try and do is have a team that's spread around the country and to do research and fieldwork that touches on every region. So as part of that project, we got to meet Nadia, who works in Lowestoft. And she was just amazingly inspirational for us. And I didn't do the interview with Nadia, but I got to read the transcript, and just reading the transcript of her interview persuaded me that she'd be a really interesting person to speak to more. And so I wanted to invite her along tonight to share her perspective as a head teacher on where we should be getting to in 10 years' time.
So
I'm really, really pleased to have been invited here tonight, mainly because often rural communities don't get a voice in these sort of forums. And a few years ago, I left Hackney to go and work in a school that was failing in a coastal town. And I thought that I had seen underprivileged communities, having worked where I worked. But when I got to Lowestoft, I was genuinely really shocked by how forgotten it was as a town. And there are many towns like that in our country. And we don't receive anything like £5,000 per student for funding. In fact, it's significantly less than London schools receive for children with often significant learning needs. So I want to tell you a little bit about my school, because that's relevant to why I've made the conclusions that I have and that I mentioned in the report. My school serves a community. 60% of our children are a receipt of pupil premium. We have 5 times the national average for educational healthcare plans. We have not one good school in the town, not one Ofsted good school in the town. There is no GP surgery because it was closed down. So if you have if you're sick, you have to go to A&E in Lowestoft. Our biggest single employer is the Birdseye factory, and 3 of our families have jobs in the Birdseye factory. 2 of our families have other jobs, and no other of our families in our school work. It's an old port. It's a very depressed town. There is a good ending to this story. We're not there yet, but it's been the most incredible thing I've ever done, and the thing I've learnt most, and this may sound really obvious, but it is so true, is that I have learnt that every single child can be successful no matter what the circumstances. I couldn't believe the toolbox I was handed. When I got there, there was no. I think I had 2 foreign, overseas teachers, and no other teachers or supply. The school was in special measures, as you can imagine. But what I learned is, by one conversation at a time with children, you can change the way they see the world. And even when your parents, things aren't great at home, if you can smile at a child every single day and tell them that there's something worth believing in, and open their eyes to the world beyond this dead seaside town, that they start waking up. And even children with significant learning needs in our school are now thriving and very successful academically and socially. And that, for me, is what keeps me doing it and keeps me wanting other people to do it. And I'm almost evangelical about joining the profession, because it's the most wonderful thing that you do is speak to a child and see their eyes light up every day. Obviously, it's not that easy, and it's not all great and gorgeous. But what I'm most concerned about over the next 10 years is recruitment and retention of teachers. This is the first year in 5 years of being in my school that we have started the year with a class teacher in front of every single class. So that means that year on year I have had to either start a year with the class not having a teacher, so maybe a learning support assistant leading that class, me leading that class a little bit with somebody else, a supply teacher who probably isn't worth the £220 that you pay for them, who doesn't care. But this is the first year that we've managed to have a teacher in every class. In terms of our fallout rate, we generally lose 1 or 2 by Christmas. And that's not because I'm a dragon. It's because it's really hard, and it's so if you are many of our classes, we have classes of 20, 25. Many of those classes will have 5 young people that have significant learning needs. There is not a special school in the town, so we are dealing with complex learning needs, and so teachers don't necessarily have the skills they need to be able to cope with that, and they certainly don't have the resources. So my hope and my desire, and what will drive me over the next decade, is a commitment to ensuring that we make the profession attractive, and that we have amazing learning opportunities for teachers, so that they are equipped to deal with situations like the situations that my teachers deal with every single day. I also feel that we need to as a culture, value the profession so much more. And I think that would make it, because I've never met a teacher that's motivated by money. So it doesn't matter how much money you take out of the profession, there's still, great people just chomping away and still doing the job. So really what people want is recognition, and really what people want in the profession is a sense that it's a great thing to do, and it is a great thing to do. So that's what will motivate me over the next 10 years to continue doing what I do, and I hope that we can end the recruitment crisis. I did say actually to Loic that, I think I said it to you, that it's a bit, I don't know if anyone's seen that quote, you climb the ladders and I'll take care of the snakes. It does feel a bit like that as a head teacher, that I feel like I'm protecting the teachers all the time from the craziness of everything that's going on around them, and all the pressures coming from Ofsted and DfE and the Trust and everything else. And all I want them to do is give them the tools they need to do what they have to do to make those young people successful. So I hope that some of a head teacher's role in the future can be much more focused on developing and retaining those people. Thank you.
Okay, we only have 10 minutes left, and as you can see, this is a pretty amazing panel. So I'm going to not be selfish. My plan was to nab the first couple of questions, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to open it up. But I should also say to you first that these are 4 of 10 amazing people who are featured in our anniversary publication, A Decade in the Making. So you can find copies on the table over there. Gemma has them, and you can also decide to support us in our future work as part of that. But what we're going to do for now is we're going to take, I think we've probably only got time for about 3 or 4 questions, so don't do that shy thing where people kind of wait to ask a question because you won't get a chance. So hands up, and I'm going to take 3 or 4 people for those last 10 minutes. And Sam is straight in there, just our Director of Research.
Thanks, Loic. It seems a bit selfish. I wanted to pick up on something that Laura raised about, I guess, from like pushy parents and whether it's going to get worse or better over the next decades. My daughter's just started school, and I get the sense, at least down in Sussex where we live, there's been most schools for the last 2 years have had massive bans outside about the cuts and what that means in terms of per pupil spending. And I think what I've seen is a real rallying round of parents around their schools, which in some it's been depressing that it's had to happen, but it's actually been quite inspiring. And I almost feel like we've moved into this new phase of like the parents as consumers relationship with the system. And I think what that looks like now, and I think will actually increase over the next decade, kind of counterpoint to what you suggested, is that parents will be really picky in choosing their school, but then they want to be involved in that school. So my question is whether you don't think that's going to be the case, rather than what you
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, sure. So of course I run this app, TeacherTapp, and we survey about 5,000 teachers a day, and one of the things we asked about was actually to do with donations recently. And what you find is, if you're in a school which is in the top quintile for free school meals, as in you have hardly any kids in your school on free meals, you probably ask for a donation and get them. If, on the other hand, you're in a school at the other end, you probably don't ask for donations, and even if you did, you wouldn't get them. And we see over and over again, just even in the communication styles with parents, right? If you're in a wealthy school, you're likely to communicate by email. If you're in an FSM5 school, you're likely to communicate by text. So what I do think is happening is we are seeing, like, schools in different areas are able to take advantage of the parents, of the community, of the ability to communicate with them in different ways. And also, those are the parents who are demanding more. So in some senses, if what we end up with is some schools that have got loads of professional capital are going to bend to the whim of those parents, and then at the other end, you've got more and more struggling schools with parents who then can't advocate for themselves, being left further and further behind, all we do is we end up with a worse situation. So, like, we can look at it positively and say yay for those parents who do get involved, but we also have to worry about what it means for those schools that really, really do get left behind.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll have 1 more if it's a long one, but 2 if they're fast. Khadija, who I used to work with when I was a teacher.
Yes. Hello. Good evening. What I would love to see in the next 10 years, and I probably will not be in existence by then, is to see the parents take more responsibility rather than putting everything on the teachers. We are actually doing a lot. We are the mother, the father, the WH Smith. I in the next 10 years? Maybe parents can take slightly more, when I mean responsibility, is take interest rather than just throw everything else.
Okay, do you have any questions? Anyone you particularly want to direct that at?
Anyone who perhaps...
Anyone got a strong opinion?
Yeah, fairly.
Luke's got one, okay, right. Okay, over to you, Luke, just for a quick response.
All right. I think obviously the evidence shows that home learning environment is vitally important, so parents creating that well is important, but parents need more support. I don't think we should be telling off parents the whole time. The parents that I work with are overworked, underpaid, stressed out, and then often are losing their jobs because their school is excluding their kid. So I take your point, but I think it needs to be at least counterbalanced by other examples, and the parents that I work with need more support.
Okay, and one final question before I hand over to Anna to finish us off. Getting there quick, one last one. Yes, Noreen.
Just a question to the student.
Nice and loud. Because we're not doing Rogan.
Can you give me 3 things which we can do to make sure that the students have higher aspirations for themselves?
Okay, so getting the GCSE grades that I did, I was actually alone a lot of the time. I did a lot of independent work. So I think if teachers really ask students how they're feeling, and not even just academically but pastorally as well, can allow that student to feel confident in themselves to continue working and feel motivated. So not only pastoral support, but maybe after school clubs, after school booster sessions. That's something that my school really prides itself on, is a lot of teacher support. They offer booster classes, they offer a lot of online resources as well. So online resources, ask students how they're feeling and ask students individually instead of as a collective, because in the student, it could be a class of 25. They're all at different stages of development, and they all understand different things in the class. So if you ask those students individually, they'll feel valued and they'll feel that motivation to keep going and to eventually aspire to get those good grades in the end.
Thank you, lovely people. I've been given the official title of bringer of the party. We've done our actually really important discussion about our values, why we're here, why we've changed our name, and there's some important thank yous before I do that. But I just want you to cast your mind back to where you would have been in 2009. Okay, so 10 years ago when we started, you might have been teaching in some of the charities that we work with, you might have been a student yourself or right in the heart of government. And just to help you with that reminiscing, this was at a time when Michael Gove wasn't in government yet, pre-Gove days. Barack Obama was just about to become the president in January of 2009. Rage Against the Machine was our Christmas #1, killing in the name of. So I want you to think about that. And myself, I was a slightly embittered teacher thinking about how I could make a change in a much larger scale. And it's been incredibly important and really valuable to see LKM-Co on its journey and to be a massive part of it. And it's a really lovely chance for us to say thank you to you as supporters, friends, comrades, drinking buddies, champions along our way, and really valuable sounding boards. So I want to say thank you first of all to our panellists who've been amazing this evening. Thank you very much. Fantastic partners working with us this evening. That includes Youth Hostel Association, Teach First, Cambridge Assessment, TESS. Thank you to all those lovely people as well for helping make this event happen and the publication get published. So let's give them a round of applause too. Guys, a thank you to be said for all the designers and the people who worked tirelessly with us to help make this change look slick, or at least I hope it does. But really kind of make it less work than it needed to be. So thank you to them and to the team for rallying around and making this magic happen. So a big thank you to them, please. And then lastly, it's pretty lonely as a leader sometimes. Loic didn't know I was going to do this. But I want to say thank you to Loic, because actually it is his vision and it is his tireless energy that helped this slightly embittered teacher make the change, help a lot of people in this room see what change could happen, And it's just nice to have a thank you sometimes when you don't always get it. So I'm going to say thanks to Loic. So lastly, all it really is for me to say is let's eat, drink and be merry. Food will be served over there. Thank you for, especially those short people like me at the back who were listening, and you will now be able to drink your fill, eat and be merry, and thank you very much. That's all. All right.